You hung on that cross, and everyone thought you lost.
Courts of Praise Worship Center in Phoenix City is proud to present Beyond the Walls to our community. You'll find more about us online at courtsofpraisepc.com. Dress is casual and the services are awesome. Come join us and feel the power of praise.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to Beyond the Walls TV. We hope that y'all have been enjoying our program. We're real excited this morning to have Tony Ventimiglia with us. He has an awesome testimony. He's a big part of Courts of Praise Worship Center. We're excited for his ministry and his work that he has done here with us. He's a good friend of mine. Tony, welcome to Beyond the Walls TV.
Thank you.
Couple of quick questions for you. You're from New York, correct?
Yes.
Born and raised in New York originally.
30 years.
30 years. And you've been with us now for how long?
Been at Courts of Praise for about 12 years.
12 years. Before that, though, you came visiting off and on your way to Disney World.
Well, actually, when we first moved here, it was in 1999. And when we first moved, we were looking for a church. And we went to a couple different churches. Of course, we live in the Bible Belt, so there's churches everywhere. And we were very active in our church in New York. And when we came here first, we went to a different church first. We tried it. It was a very large church, and it was nice. It was a really good church, but didn't really meet people. And again, we didn't really know anyone here. So we tried a couple different places. And actually, it was one visit when my parents were visiting us. We were just looking in the phone book, looking for churches. And where we went to in New York, we went to a non-denominational church. And we said, well, we were trying different denominations while we were here. And we said, let's try our roots and go back to a non-denominational church. And I'll remember the first time we came in, I believe it was March of 2000. We had moved in 99, and in March of 2000, we decided to try a different church. And we came here, and at the time, Jimmy was greeting. And it was a totally different feel than when we had previously gone to other churches that we visited. It was a smaller church, which we liked. And Jimmy came right over, introduced himself, and introduced us to the church. And it was just a totally different feel of small town, as you would expect, in the South, a small town atmosphere. And pretty much from that first visit, we never left.
That's awesome. And we've been glad to have you ever since then. I know over the years, me and you have become real close, good friends. You're one of my best friends, and I thank you for that. I'd like to hear, I know we'd all like to hear a little more about the difference maybe between how you grew up in New York and what you have found in the South. Of course, we all know there's differences, but faith-wise, maybe some of the differences that maybe you can share with us.
Sure. Well, especially where we lived on Long Island, Catholicism is very prevalent. Now, I haven't been in a Catholic church probably other than weddings since I was 6 or 7 years old, but I was brought up, I had a communion, I went to confession, all those things that you do. I don't remember very much of it because when we moved from where we lived in Nassau County, New York to Suffolk County, New York, we stopped going to church for a while. But so we didn't have that for a little bit of time. And then I was in 3rd grade, and we had friends that had taken us to a Baptist church in the area because, even though people think of New York as the big city, but there's still areas, even in New York, that are just as country or rural as Phoenix City or Columbus. But they're fewer and far between now. I think it's very grown industrial where we lived in Long Island. But at the time, going back years in the mid-70s or so, it wasn't as grown as it was, but there was, believe it or not, a lot more churches than you would think. You think the Bible Belt is just the South, but there was non-denominational churches, there were Baptist churches, there were Catholic churches, which were predominant. But I was in 3rd grade, and we had friends that were going to a Baptist church for Awana, the program that they have for kids. And that's where I ended up very first time. My brother had gone and I had gone, and that's where I accepted the Lord when I was in 3rd grade at the Awana program at the Baptist church there. And I think my parents at the time weren't going to church. And I don't know if it's our influence or the fact that we were annoying, one or the other. We had them coming when they had things at the church for programs. We'd have my parents come, my mother and my stepfather. And after a while, my aunt was saved, and she was working on my mother going to church. We went from the Baptist church to Church of God, which was another church, in the area. And we went there for a number of years before moving to a non-denominational church. So we kind of, I don't want to say church hopped, because when we stayed in a church, we were there for a decent amount of time. But, our faith was there, but you still had the opportunity to branch out in it for different areas and different denominations. The final church we were in when we moved was a church I went to school at. They had a Christian school. And I stayed there pretty much. My brother and sister were already going to the school. And it was a very small Christian school. They only went up to a certain grade. And at the time, they weren't going up to, I was already in 9th grade, and they weren't going up higher. Well, the following year, they decided they were going to add 9th and 10th grade. My brother and sister were already in the school, and I was the only one in the family not in the school. So what I had decided to do my 10th grade year was to take 10th grade over again, to go with everybody who was going at that time. And it was a small group in 10th grade at the time. And so I basically took 10th year over without needing to, just so I can go to the school, which was fine. I mean, then again, it helped me because I knew a lot of what 10th graders did, so I had already had that behind me. I ended up not graduating at the same time a lot of my friends who went to the public school went to. But by that time, I had already built a good core of friends in the school that I was friends with, and my very best friend at the time in high school was in school with us there. So I went through that with them. I would say some of the differences between the South and the North. When we first moved, we had very good friends from college who were joking about, "You're moving to Alabama. I mean, there's nothing down there. It's going to be so backward, and you're not going to be used to it." And at the time, it was funny. And when we first moved, I would send pictures to my friends and say, "Look, there's supermarkets here. It's not all just farm stands." And there is, believe it or not, I mean, even though we did not live in the city in New York, there were a lot of misconceptions and preconceived notions about what the South is like, how backward the South is. But, I found when we first moved, the challenges I had the most were related to trying to slow down, because there is that difference between the North and the South. It is a much slower tempo to life, which I loved. It took a little getting used to when we first moved, and I'd go to the supermarket and I'd be online and the person in front of me is talking to the checker. And I would be like, "Okay, I'm just getting groceries, finish talking another time." And that was a little bit different getting used to, because, while New Yorkers have the perception of not being friendly and everybody's in a rush, in some respects that's true, but in other respects there are people that are friendly, that will do things for you. But I think it's much more heightened in the South. And that took a little getting used to. I was pleased to do it, because prior to moving, I worked for 7 years in Manhattan, in New York, and I commuted 2 hours each way. So I would leave my house at 6 in the morning. I would get in my office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that was on days where there was no train delays, because I took the train. So I basically took my car from the house to the train station, a train from the train station into Manhattan, and either walked or the subway to my office. So it was either 3 modes of transportation both ways. And then you turned that around and went the same way home. And I was just getting really tired of it. I did it for 7 years, and there's people who, still live in New York that they retire from their jobs 30, 40 years, taking a train in and coming back out on that train every day. And I just decided as a person, I couldn't do that anymore. It really is disheartening when your opinion of people is, I don't want to say denigrated, but where you have an opinion of people who were morose or destitute, and they threw themselves, train delays could be caused by a lot of things. But there were a lot of people who, unfortunately, for whatever reason in their life, decided to end their life in front of a train. I knew I couldn't commute anymore when we had a train delay because someone did it, and the first thought out of my mind is they could not wait till after rush hour.
That's terrible.
It's horrible, but your mindset when you're doing this, and it becomes so rote that this is what you do. I take the train to work, I take the train home. This is my life. And I realized, especially for raising a family, at the time, when I first started working, wasn't married yet or had any kids, but by the time we moved, AJ was 3, and I had thought about it, and it was like, holy cow, there's no way I'm going to be able to do things with him as a kid, like kids do in the afternoons, because it's going to take me 2 hours to get from my office to home anytime. Plus, that's if there's no delays. So, I didn't know my kids would play sports because I never played sports. I wasn't good at any of them. Lo and behold, they're good at everything, and they clearly get it from Diane. But, I decided that for our life, that was not going to be the way I wanted it to be. And that's not to say that people who do it, that's their prerogative, they can do it. But I wanted to change a life, and we had that opportunity.
So, let me ask you this question. Being that you got saved in 3rd grade, you raised up in the church, in a Christian family, during your teenage years, were you a normal teenager? Like the rest of us, you found yourself in trouble? Or did you stick to what you did in 3rd grade?
Well, not many people would say I was a normal teenager. Let's start with that. Again, I was in Christian school. Well, I take that back. Before going to Christian school, I was in public school. But I was much quieter than I am now. I mean, now I don't shut up. But when I was in high school, I was very shy. I was more reserved than I am now. I honestly can say never in my life have I smoked, have I done drugs, to any of that. But I was like Pastor always says, he was a good, bad person. I was the opposite. I was the way, my way was to do it where I would use my brains to try to get even with people or to try to prove something. So I would be the one in Christian school when we had to do book reports arguing, why can't I do Dracula? Because it's a story about good and evil, and good wins in the end, so isn't that really what we're supposed to be? Or I would argue why the Exorcist wasn't a bad movie, because in the end, the demon's expelled, so if the demon's expelled, wouldn't that be what we want to I was the type of person who argued logic. I realize now, looking back, that was disobedience, clearly.
Right.
And, we're to be obedient, and then the Lord's able to work through us. So I had my way of being,
right,
quote, disobedient or bad.
And that's good that you brought it out like that, because it was still a rebellious spirit.
Yes.
And I really shouldn't have said a normal teenager, because a normal, really to be walking in Christ is normal.
Right.
The world has its standards, but the standards we live by is the Bible. And but there was still that rebellious spirit, and just because you didn't smoke, drink, go after all these women and all that, there was still that issue there. There was still a need for repentance. There was still a need for a Savior, even though you didn't have all the outward signs that most people look for when they say, well, you need to change your life. Right. There was still a need for change there in your life. And that's great that you brought that out, because we all rebel in a different way, but that rebellious spirit is still there, and we still have to pray against it, and we have to guard against it. Yeah. So that's great.
Well, I mean, like I said, everybody has their own way of doing it, and I was really, again, being the logical person I was very against the drinking and things along those lines in high school, because at the time when I was in junior high, we had a friend's brother who got into a bad accident. He was thrown from a truck. And ever since going to his funeral, it was always, how could you get in a car after seeing that? And I was the one who every time in high school somebody wanted to go do something, I actually had friends that were going to do something, and I made them drop me off in the middle of nowhere. I said, I'll walk home. And they came back to get me and said, forget it, we're not going. I said, if you want to go, go, but I'll walk all the way here. And I was about 10 miles, 15 miles from home. And I said, I'll walk home. I will not get in a car if you're going to be drinking. And, I don't know whether that changed what they did after they dropped me off at home, but I was not going to get in a car because I was so serious about that issue at the time that I wasn't going to sway on it. So.
And you probably saved a lot of lives that night.
Oh, I'd hope so.
And that's great.
Beyond the Walls, presented by Courts of Praise Worship Center in Phoenix City, and brought to you by Phoenix Drag Strip, where racers, fans, and families come together for the best drag racing action in the Southeast. Building Unlimited, our name says it all, because we build it all. Commercial or residential, we've got you covered. Cuts Unlimited, from residential lawn maintenance to full commercial landscape design and installation, call us first. J.L. Thomas & Builders, over 22 years of quality home and commercial building and remodeling. J.L. Thomason, quality guaranteed. And Westwood Properties, beautiful and spacious apartment homes in Phoenix City. Call us today and move in tomorrow. Also, Diverse Mechanical, for all your commercial, fabrication, and welding needs. Located in Columbus, Diverse Mechanical. Thanks to all of our fine sponsors for bringing Beyond the Walls to everyone in our community.
One of the reasons that we're here this morning is to talk about you losing over 100 pounds. You know, basically you've shrunk before our eyes, and that is a big accomplishment in anybody's life. Mm-hmm. You know, over 100 pounds, I mean, that's a whole nother person when you think about it. So we'd really like for you to share with us, you know, how that came about.
Okay. Well, I pretty much battled my weight all my life. I had lost some weight when I was getting married, and then once we had, at age of our first child, I gained it all back. Some of it was probably sympathy eating with Diane at the time. Some of it was just sympathy for having a child eating, so I just continued to do it. So I did fluctuate a lot then. Recently, I just realized it's been about a year. I lost 107 pounds in a year and 2 months.
Wow.
And I decided, I think the catalyst for it at the time, you know, I wasn't comfortable. You know, I always joke that, you know, the only time I would run is if somebody was chasing me. So if you saw me running, that meant run because something was chasing me. I was leading a very sedentary life, not moving around that much, sitting on the couch, eating at night after 8 o'clock, which, you know, is a big no-no, and snacking a lot and snacking at my desk at work. And it's funny, I went on a trip to Vancouver in July of 2012. And first of all, as big as I was, sitting in a plane seat for as many hours as I was on a plane was not comfortable, and definitely wasn't comfortable for the person next to me either. And then when I went to Vancouver, it's interesting, I had friends I went to see while we were there, and I was at a meeting, and I went with a number of people to one of the parks there that had like a really beautiful suspension bridge, and you know, Vancouver's beautiful. But then when they loaded all these pictures to Facebook and I looked at myself in the pictures, I was like, oh my gosh. And I said, you know, at that point I said, I really should do something. But I really didn't have any idea of what I meant to do. You know, it was a nice idea to say, oh, I need to do something. And then at the time, you and Drew were going to the gym working out. And I think even said it as a lark one day at lunch when we had gone to lunch one Sunday after church, oh, I should go with you guys. And Drew called me on it and said, yeah, you should go. So I said, all right, why not? And I went with you guys a few times, and I'm a very obsessive compulsive personality. And you guys were going kind of sporadically at night. You'd go one time one night, one time another, and I have to get things in a set schedule. As you know, knowing me as many years as you do, I'm kind of structured. Let's not call it obsessive, let's call it structured.
That's right.
And I decided, you know, if I'm going to do this, I've got to do it on my time frame and my schedule. So I basically decided at that point, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. I'm going to do a set number of exercises. I'm going to do a set amount of cardio, and then I'm going to go home. While doing that, while all that's great, I also decided we really, in our house, had to change our eating habits. So in addition to doing the gym, which was helpful, we, and I mean me, Diane, and in some respects the boys, as much as we can bring them kicking and screaming into doing it, you know, Diane and I don't eat white bread much anymore, I mean, unless we're out, but we do wheat bread in the house when we do bread. We do a lot less of the snacks that are bad. We get a lot of light snacks. We do a lot of fruits and vegetables. Most days during the week we eat salads. You know, I, as the man, unfortunately have lost more weight than Diane. She's lost almost 40 pounds herself, but it's slower for women, which every woman tells me every time they say, oh, you lost more than her because it's easier for a man. And that's possibly true. Sometimes metabolism is a better thing. But, you know, we've both been doing it together, and I think that's part of the key, is the fact that she and I have been doing this together as a team. It's not one person's doing it and the other person's not, and making it difficult on the other person. Because if I were to come home and Diane was eating chocolate cake in front of me, it would be so easy for me to just dive my head into that chocolate cake and eat the chocolate cake. But we're doing it as a team, and I think that's made all the difference in that regard. And of course, the movement and the exercise has made a big difference. And the thing to remember is, you know, a lot of people feel that if you diet, my mother being one of them, she and I argue about dieting all the time, she feels if she eats one small meal a day and then doesn't eat, that's a great diet. And as I've explained to her, that's not really a great diet, because after you eat that one small meal today, tomorrow you're famished and you'll eat an entire chocolate cake. And that's a fluctuation. It's really more a habit of changing your eating habits.
Right.
It should be much more progressive to say, you know what, I'm going to eat 3 meals a day. I may snack, but this is what I'm going to do. Diane laughs when I make my lunches in the morning because we take a salad every day, but I will throw in my lunch bag, and usually I have to squeeze my lunch bag shut to do it. I'll take 2 bananas, I'll take an orange, I'll take an apple, I'll take a granola bar, I take carrot sticks with hummus, and I have so much food in my bag when I go to work that she says, how could you possibly eat all that and lose weight? Well, the reason I can is because instead of sticking a bag of 7 Oreos, chips and all this stuff, I'm bringing fruits and vegetables. And so I will progressively eat from 6:15 in the morning when I come home from the gym to 7 o'clock at night when I have dinner all day. But it's a difference in what I'm eating.
Right.
And everybody laughs at me at work because they call me the rabbit, because when I pull my carrots out about 10 in the morning, I'll have a plate full of carrots with a little bit of dip or a little bit of hummus, and then that holds me till lunch, and then I'll have lunch and then snack in the afternoon. A thing to remember is you can't really, if you're going to be successful at weight loss, you really can't cut yourself off from everything else. And I know there's people that say, oh, you know, you can't do sugars, you can't do. If I want a Gigi's cupcake, I have it. You know that, we've gone. I'll have a Gigi's cupcake. Sometimes I'll split it in half with Diane. You know what? Sometimes I'll have a whole cupcake. Does that make it harder to lose weight? I don't think so, because it's easier for me to be strong when I want to be strong, or strong during the week when I know that I'm going to have a treat when I want one.
Right.
And it's not the fact that I'm denying myself things. If we have somebody's birthday, I don't say, oh, I can't eat birthday cake. I'll have a piece of birthday cake. I'll just have a smaller piece of birthday cake. If we go out to lunch, I eat the chips and salsa. But I don't eat to excess like I used to. And I've tried to endeavor that in most cases we don't snack every night in the house. We used to, you know, before starting this program, we used to eat chocolate chip cookies every night. We'd make homemade chocolate chip cookies every night after 8 o'clock. And now thinking about it, it's like, oh my gosh, have you ever read the back of a package of those chocolate chip cookies, the frozen ones? How many calories are in each cookie? There's 70 calories per cookie. We were eating 5 or 6 each. That's a lot of calories to eat and to go to bed.
Yeah.
So it's just this thought process. I've become more of a, I don't want to say I'm a general about it, but I will start looking now when we go shopping. I'll look at packages to see what's the calorie content, what's the fat content. But I figure, you know what, if I'm going to the gym every morning, it's 5 in the morning till 6, I'm really going to work at it. I don't want to jeopardize myself because,
Right.
you know, it'd be so nice. Even this morning when I woke up at 10 to 5, it would have been so nice to say, you know, I want to go back to sleep. But if I don't get up and start getting into the routine, I'm not going to want to do it. And sure, if I take this Monday off, what if I want to take Wednesday off? I can
Right.
start building that I don't want to do it. And that's why even when I travel, the first thing I look for when we get announced, when we're having conferences, what hotel we're going to be at. Very first thing I do is I look to see if they've got a gym. And most of them do. And I keep my routine up even when I'm at a hotel. And I'll go same time and everything, again, being structured, not necessarily obsessive, but structured. I find that if I keep my routine even when I'm out of town, it's easier when I come back into town
Right.
to get into it. And one thing I started recently doing, you know, I joked before that, I said, the only time I'm going to run is if someone's chasing me. And I've actually started jogging on the treadmill, which is a big change for me because I've never jogged, and I've been jogging around the neighborhood somewhat. I never really ran. Even when I was thinner, I never really ran. And the other day, I was jogging around the track at Lamb Road, and Diane told me yesterday, she says, oh, you know, someone on Facebook had seen you, and they said, you're an inspiration. And I'm thinking to myself, shoot, if they were jogging next to me and hearing me having breathing while I was going around that track, I wouldn't have been an inspiration. I was perspiration. But, you know, I don't consider it as an inspiration. I'm glad people think of that. It's embarrassing to me when I hear that. But I think I did it for me. The fact that
Right.
other people say that and they feel they get something out of it, I'm glad for that, but I really did it for me. Because even when I was doing it, Matthew would joke about, you know, oh, Dad, you're going to run, or you're going to do that. Or if I had something, you know, the boys would be like, oh, Dad, you're going to eat that now. So they were even noticing what I was doing and how important
Right.
it was. And things I wouldn't do before, because, you know, it was hard for me.
Right.
Matthew will say, oh, you want to come outside and throw the football? And I'll go do that. Or I'll chase the dog around the yard without getting out of breath, which was nice. So it is a lifestyle change. I'm still
Right.
working on getting clothes that aren't as big on me, but it is a lifestyle change. And I think we're having a good time doing it. Like I said, I'm not doing it to a point where I'm uncomfortable and
Right.
I'm like, oh gosh, if I have to do this another day, I'm just going to be ill. I'm not tired. I'm not hungry. I think it's really been a good thing.
I think one important key is it took you a long time to put the weight on,
Oh yeah.
and it took you a long time to take off 107 pounds.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It didn't come off in 2 weeks.
No, and one thing I did forget to mention is, and it's one thing I said when I posted something on Facebook, one of the other reasons, in addition to the travel and all that and being comfortable, you know, we've been learning a lot in church and Sunday school and Sunday service about our body being a temple. And, you know, it's one thing to grow spiritually, but it's also important to recognize that if our body is a temple, we need to take care of it.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I tied into when I was doing it. It's like, well, I guess I got to treat my body as a temple. And people abuse their body in many ways, you know, by eating things they're not supposed to, by drinking, by smoking. There's a lot of ways that you're not treating your body as a temple.
Right.
But I decided, mine was definitely food. There's no doubt about it, mine was definitely food. But when you get control of that, let me rephrase that. When the Lord helps you get control of that,
Right.
your body becomes more of a temple and you're able to do things that you're not able to do before. And in addition to the spiritual growth, it's a physical growth.
Right.
Well, maybe a physical shrinking. Let's not call it a physical growth. But it's a physical shrinking.
Right.
And, you know, I pray every morning on my way to the gym. I pray every morning on my way back from the gym. Sometimes I'm praying because my body hurts, but because I've done something a little bit too much than I should have.
Right.
But, you know, it's not anything that I don't think I can grow out of. And I think it's a growth area that I have because of all the years that food has overtaken my life to support, to come out of that, and to go forward. I'm still going to, you know, everyone asks, well, how much more do you want to lose? Well, I'm not sure yet. You know, the Lord hasn't dropped a number in my heart.
Right.
I'll know when I get there. When it's time to stop, I'll stop. But I don't think I'll really stop exercising much because I think, especially for me, that's going to be a maintenance for the rest of my life, which isn't a bad thing. I'd like to be 95 years old and on a treadmill. I see people where my parents live and where my in-laws live all the time, and some of these people that are in their 90s and exercising look incredible. So I'd like that to be me if the Lord doesn't come before then. So we'll see.
You know, it's funny you say that. I think of Joshua and Caleb. They were the same at 85 as they were at 40. And when Caleb stood before the mountain and said, give me this mountain. He had the same stature, the same demeanor, the same oomph that he had at 85 that he had at 40. So that's an awesome goal to reach for. Well, we've come to the end of another show. Again, I'd like to thank you for being with us on Beyond the Walls TV. One more thing that I'd like to do this morning before we end. Tony talked about battling with his weight, how the food had a hold on him for many years. And it really took the Lord coming in and making a change in his life for him to make a change. And I know that there's many watching today that maybe you have an addiction, maybe it's not to food, maybe it's to some substance that you just have been battling for most of your life. And it's very important to know that there is a way out, and that way is through Jesus Christ. And this morning, as the opportunity is before you, He's standing at the door knocking. This is your day. This is your time to say, I've had enough. I'm tired of living my life like I'm living it. I've been addicted to this for too many years. I've struggled with this. I've had heartache over that. The sorrow's too much, and I'm ready to be done with all of it. Jesus is here to take that all away. This is your opportunity to say yes to Him.